What do you make of this back and forth between organized labor, private sector, and the federal government with regards to a new minimum wage? This conversation has been going on for quite a while. The organized labor is saying government is not being sincere with them with regards to this conversation because they are insisting on a particular sum, and we have the deadline just a few days away.
Thank you very much. It's really a long one for Nigeria and for Nigerians, the Nigerian civil servants, and not just the civil servant. It is instructive to note that the entire sectors, private and public, are waiting for the outcome or final position with regards to the minimum wage, or what I rather call the living wage. You know, I don't want to consider it minimum wage, because minimum wage may not be a living wage, as we can see, because the engagement with the federal government will basically be the benchmark that will now be the basis for, you know, charting or locking down whatever will be the minimum wage, even at subnationals and in the private sector. That being said, the latest logjam is expected. We all know that the situation is in the country, the cost of living crisis has been escalating. We step a little back, everybody knows. Just look at this for a second and say the average price of a loaf of bread, you know, for a family of 2 or 3 is 1,500. If you multiply that by the week, you have maybe 15,000 a week, 45,000 already. A staff that is taking transport with an average of 1,000 going and coming, that is 2,000 a day. Multiplied by 5, that is 10,000 already. If you multiply that by the 4 weeks, you know, already you can see the cost piling up for the basic subsistent, basically crawling on the floor, you know, cost of living. We have not added the pricing for electricity, you know, for water. We all buy water. You know, government has basically forgotten that I don't know how many of Nigerians enjoy pipe-borne water. You basically buy pure water or other forms of water. That being said, I think government should be more practical and pragmatic so that we close this conversation. Because if we take a step back and look at when this negotiation started till today, what has happened is the inflation rates, whether it is headline or core or food inflation, have been escalating and galloping. And then yesterday also the CBN governor gave us a love letter. We saw the rates and the indices, which are going to further choke the economy. Yesterday also, interestingly, the president of Angola increased the minimum wage of the civil servants of Angola to $120, you know, which is 100,000 kwanzos, if I got it right. You know, in Nigerian, if you change it to Nigerian, you know, naira, it's about maybe 225 to 230,000 naira. If you take this baseline data that I've been brandishing about, you realize that really government needs to be very practical with this minimum or living wage, because part of the problem, I want to, you know, touchlight a particular area for government to consider while doing this negotiation also. If you want to fight corruption, the first place to start is to deal with living wage. You cannot expect to fight corruption when people barely, you know, survive.
Is the living wage proposed by Labour? Is the living wage proposed by Labour feasible? Labour initially said 615,000 naira. As at yesterday, from what we have heard, it has been reduced to close to 500,000 naira. Is that a feasible wage that the government will be able to pay?
Theophilus, as far as I'm concerned, that number is not feasible. And from where I sit, if I want to do some role playing, I want to believe that that is a number thrown for the purpose of negotiation. Everybody knows that there's no how you can give 620,000 naira as minimum wage. But what I would like to see is a middle ground conversation where practicality meets, you know, aspirations. While the Labour, you know, are looking at 650 as an aspiration, the government looks at practicality. I just gave you numbers earlier. This is baseline numbers which everybody knows with regards to what is feasible. Let us also not forget, at subnationals, we've seen some activities happening. which is commendable. Edo State has jacked up to 70,000. We can see some semblance of acceptance at that level. Yesterday, the negotiations between the Labour at Anambra State and the governor of Anambra, Professor Chukwuma Soludo, the outcome was very good. As of yesterday night, they came, they said they were happy with the progress being made. But at the federal level, I would like to see another layer of engagement that will lead to, a win-win situation. I'm not saying government should pay that kind of humongous, impossible amount of money, but I'll also lend my voice to fellow Nigerians, because the workers are fellow Nigerians, that amount of 50-something thousand is not tenable. We should look at ways and means to upscale that to what I call the living wage, and then we take it from there to how that will be paid. I understand also government is looking at numbers they can accommodate, but the reality is we must deal with this issue of minimum wage if any sensible governance will happen going forward. Otherwise, this bric-a-brac will continue, and then it will affect governance, because the civil servants, the public sector drive, the governance of the country.
When we are saying what is deemed, feasible, we're also talking about the possibility of governors having to, be able to pay this amount. We still know that some states are still having issues handling the minimum wage. We saw the NLC president yesterday describing, the federal government proposal as unsubstantial. What is deemed normal to you, and what is the amount that you think should be payable, especially what state governments can handle? Okay.
I will answer from two perspectives. I think even the Labour, from what I can see now, from the body language and the activities in Edo and in Anambra, there should be an understanding that there should be a layer of minimum wage that should be acceptable at federal and state level. And that is why I was saying, looking at the baseline, because definitely at the subnational, going forward, there may be some kind of stratification with regards to living wages in some states. I reckon in the years to come, there won't be a baseline standard, minimum wage that will be at federal that may apply at subnational. Why? Because it is very clear that the states have different measures or different capacities or purchasing powers or accommodate cost. So that being said, when you talked about what I think should be the minimum, if I look at the numbers I highlighted earlier, which you knew, I wouldn't want to throw a number because I'm not part of the negotiation. Because also we should note, the final figure that will be agreed on will also have what I call a shock effect on inflation. Some of us have been saying it since last year, November, and that is why we wanted the negotiation to be locked down. Because the moment you increase living wages, naturally, it will impact on inflation, especially food inflation and all that.